Howdy, howdy. We are live, but not really if all of this worked correctly. But that can be explained in just a moment. But yes, Dave and I are here. There is a new episode of Star Trek, so there's something for us to talk about. So, Dave, this is going to be a leaner show. It's just going to be you and me, and I think we're gonna maybe move at a quicker pace and maybe not go into all the details we normally do. But yeah, I think there's still going to be a ton to talk about. So.
It's like
I'm ready.
Riker and Picard back together again.
Yeah. Hopefully,
Hopefully with a better plan than they had.
hopefully we have things a little better planned out. But we'll see. Probably not by much if we do it all. I'm ready though. If you're ready,
Let's do it.
I'm Fatheree,
This is Dave.
and this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 231st installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek, old and new. And tonight we are talking about Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 2, Disengage, written by Christopher Monfette and Sean Tretta, and directed by Doug Aarniokoski. And just to explain a few things to everyone, the show is going to be a little different than usual. Sorry if there is a decline in typical quality for the audio listening or for the visual presentation. It's going to be much leaner. We're not going to have the images that we like to share normally. That is because we do this show live every Friday night. And this year, the Star Trek cruise that I am very happy to board and be a part of and take part in actually departed tonight, left LA, hopefully, assuming everything went according to plan. I hope it did. And I'm on board that ship. So in order to still have our live show out and still talk about this week's episode of Star Trek Picard, Dave and I had to take the Starship Texas of the past, fly it around the sun at high warp, and do some time travel shenanigans to project the show into the future from the past. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I'll miss being not being able to interact with comments, but just it's for a week. It's for a week. Maybe two.
Apologies about that, but hopefully people are watching and commenting in the live audience. And if you listen to the podcast later, and you typically don't catch the live show, or if you normally catch us on the YouTube replay, then none of this matters. It's just business as usual for you. It'll still be a little bit of a leaner show, but we still have some juicy stuff to get into. It's just the two of us.
It's only the most talked about Star Trek show in a few years, it seems like, at least since Picard season 2. So
yeah, the buzz is real. So just real quick before we get into it, as always, we want to thank all of our lovely Patreon supporters. So thank you so much, Starfleet Boy, Cake is Eternal, Gay Clevin Lundstrom, Crazy Dutchy, Joanne Robertson, John Dog Geek Filter, Earl Grey Trekkie, Quarks Bar, and our anonymous supporters. Just a bit of news for everyone. We do a monthly Patreon watch party. The next one's going to be Saturday, March 18th. We're going to be watching the DS9 episode Way of the Warrior. That's that big two-parter that kicked off Season 4, that introduced Worf to the show and started that conflict with the Klingons. Actually, first appearance of Martok. Galron shows up, and then you got Dukat and Garrick doing Cardassian stuff. It's a big episode, so that'll be a fun one, I think, to watch with a big group.
Yeah, totally.
And you can come into the Patreon as little as $2 per month. You can be more generous if you want. There's additional perks at the higher tiers, but at $2 a month, that gets you into the Patreon watch parties every month. And, if you would love to support the show in different ways other than a monthly commitment, you can always super chat if you're in the live audience, and we'll always gladly stop our conversation and read your comments with super chat, and anyone else should just chime in, because we love, reading all the comments we can get to, and it's, kind of hard when there's a lot of people chiming off all the time, but yeah, it always adds to our conversation when we're able to participate in that live. So,
which is
like now,
like 99% of the time. So we're just weird exception week.
If anyone comes into the show later, if they don't realize that we're not live, if anyone is super chatting though, please, regulars in the audience, please thank them and let them know that we appreciate that support, and we would read it if we were there, but we're not. This is all an illusion.
If we can, we'll travel back in time and read them.
Yeah,
we'll
do
work
the best
on it.
We can.
We got to go to the Guardian.
But with all of that out of the way, I think we're ready to talk about Disengage.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I'm just going to quickly recap it, per usual, by reading the synopsis, and I'll kind of expand on it with spoilers. But the official synopsis reads, aided by 7 of 9 and the crew of the U.S.S. Titan, Picard makes a shocking discovery that will alter his life forever, and puts him on a collision course with the most cunning enemy he's ever encountered. Okay, that one might be a bit of a stretch, but moving on.
You got to give the character time to grow into that if that's the case.
Meanwhile, Raffi races to track a catastrophic weapon and collides with a familiar ally. So we have all kinds of collisions going on. But yeah, the familiar ally, that was something. I got a kick out of that. Just to remind everyone, we had a lot of fun talking about the first episode last week. Well, I say we had a lot of fun. I don't know if Dave did, but we had our friends Rachel and Aaron on the show with us, and they were both very enthused with Picard. Aaron, of course, got to go to the premiere, so he'd already seen this episode as well. I
felt bad to be the naysayer amidst such a celebratory thing, especially right after people had gone to formal premieres. But I guess this will let you know. I'm here to tell the truth. I'm not gonna dial it back. If
Dave doesn't sugarcoat.
I don't sugarcoat. Maybe a little bit sometimes.
Well, I was a little mixed on the first episode. There's a lot that I thought was really cool and exciting and showed a lot of potential. There's a lot that made me nervous. I talked about how I'd been kind of stressed out after seeing it, and really needed to see what happened next. So we were the least automatically on board with Picard from day one, like other people seem to be. But now with the second episode, I don't know. I guess we should go into our opening statements, just kind of give our broad impressions on it, and then we'll talk about it in more detail. But Dave, I guess since you were the one more skeptical last week, people are probably more dying to know how you feel. So why don't I go first, and then you give.
I like it. I like suspense.
But for me, this episode, lots of fun. I liked this quite a bit more than last week's episode, which, like I said, I was mixed on. This one made me squeal with glee like crazy when Worf showed up and act ridiculous, and I think it's kind of nuts when you get there's weird fanboy reactions that are like, oh my god, it's R2-D2 and a Star Wars movie. Who could imagine that? It's like, yeah, okay, it's not that big of it, but no, like this is a big deal. It was Worf back on screen finally after 2 decades. Yes.
Yeah.
So
fighting Mad Worf.
I don't know if that sequence will satisfy every Worf fan. Might be a bit much for some folks, but personally, I loved it, and so did my inner 12-year-old, who was also a big Worf fan. The Captain Shaw, I think, shined a bit in this episode. I liked we got to humanize him a bit. Jonathan Frakes still killing it, just phenomenal as Riker. Great combination of writing and acting there for Riker. I want to comment on that more as we discuss later on. Finally, we get to see the baddie Vadic Not sure what to think of her just yet. I see potential for fun, but also potential for maybe going a bit too hammy. But we'll see. So far the villain hasn't been that prominent. It's more about our hero characters. So, but the biggest thing of all that I would have thought 24 hours ago would be impossible, but they might have sold me on their mystery boy, or Jack as we can call him now, but they might have sold me on this new character Jack uh, in a way that I might actually be okay with Bev and JL having a secret love baby, which I was pretty adamant I did not want last week. But I don't know. Maybe they can convince me to change my mind on that, which is an impressive feat. But yeah, I had a pretty good time with this episode.
Yeah, details still forthcoming on that one, so it's hard to say for sure. but but they did do some more lifting with that storyline this time. So
Well, Dave, tell us your broad takeaway on Disengage, and then we'll get into the episode breakdown and talk about all the details.
all right. Um. So listen, I'm not gonna rescind my harsh words for the first episode. But like you, I liked this one better, and maybe because it was a bigger shift for me, I liked it. I'd say notably better. Um, we talked about this off mic a little bit, but in the first one, my mind was sort of tallying up little plot points I didn't like, some small things that annoyed me, some big things too. And this time I was like in a different mode pretty quickly, and my mind was like, oh, I kind of like that. Oh, that's a cool scene. Oh, Raffi's ex. Oh, I like that. Oh my God, it's Worf. And so it was just a whole lot more hits than misses this time for me. And some of the stuff that I didn't like, I felt like kind of got recontextualized here. So, I didn't like seeing Beverly just come out swinging as an action hero. Not because I don't want characters to get their action moment, but because I'm just like, it doesn't seem like her. It just didn't feel like a continuation of the character as we knew her. But I thought they made a good case in this that, she has been out of the picture for 20 years, and who hasn't changed in 20 years. And getting the notion of her as this rough and tumble Doctors Without Borders rebel alongside her son. That I can see it now. I'm like, she was always kind of hard headed, and so her, kicking some ass to do the right thing, that does sound like Beverly. So that really sold me on it a lot more. I didn't like Shaw in the first episode. I thought they turned his dialogue up to 11 and reminding us with every word he said that he was meant to be a fly in the ointment for our characters. So I just thought he was just a little cartoonishly obnoxious. But now we're starting to see some nuance. I was even feeling a little sympathy for how put upon he was. He finally makes a decision. Okay, I'm just going to bail these guys out, and then there's like suddenly a whole ship hitting his ship, and I felt bad for him there. I saw his face, and I was like, "That's a bad day. It's just for anybody." I think I actually might be. I liked Sneed, the crime lord. I thought he felt genuinely menacing. I was pretty on board Amanda Plummer's character. Maybe it's because everything else was rocking pretty well that I thought that kind of that scenery chewing worked all right. But we'll talk more about that when we get to it. And then lots of these memorable moments too, like the look between Picard and Beverly. So there's still, I need to see how Shaw plays out. Need to see how Jack Crusher Jr. Is there a way to differentiate him? But
The live one,
the live one.
the
Don't tell
one that's doing things.
Don't tell that to Beverly.
About.
That's mean. But I need to see how that plays out. I need to see how all of it plays out. But suddenly I'm kind of like, okay. Oh, maybe they might be pulling this off. I'm kind of having a good time here. What happened? So yes, I feel pretty happy about this episode.
Yeah, it does kind of make me jealous of the people at the premiere. I mean, obviously, I would be jealous of that, but just being able to see both these episodes, I think, back to back, and perhaps even, on like the big screen, I think a lot of these cinematic visuals probably benefit from that type of
Sure.
presentation. And like the audience reaction to that's something that Aaron mentioned in the show last week when
Mm.
that Raffi witnesses that the weapon collapse that building and everyone in the theater gasped
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff like that. So
Yeah,
these two episodes probably pair together pretty well.
I wish maybe that, not that, I don't know if I would have time, but I wish, like they would do that thing where like local theaters, screen them, on some days so you could go see it, because
Yeah, like a
with
Fathom
especially,
event thing.
yeah, just like
They've
that.
Terry said he wants to do that for these last two. Which
Uh,
I mean that can be like set up in like a month. Like it doesn't take a lot of effort for that type
you
of
mean like the last two
theatrical release.
episodes of,
Yeah,
this season?
yeah.
Yeah, that would be cool. Obviously with the movie like budgets that they seem to have and that level of effects, the spectacle is would be something that to see on the big screen. Aside from all the emotional context of everything with the characters. So I hope that happens.
Well, let's go ahead and get to our episode breakdown. Again, apologies to people watching on YouTube. We're not going to have the typical visual presentation we do with screenshots just because we had to do a smaller show ahead of time. Again, this is not really live. So, uh, but let's start at the beginning. We open actually. They do the recap, but then we get that 2 weeks ago flashback
Right?
to that Star Child song by a band I've never heard of called Baby.
Yeah,
Uh,
I wasn't particularly familiar with it. What was it like? Kind of like a 70s
it sounded very 70s, but I looked. It's like
70s rock, or
this album came out in 2022. I'm like, oh,
oh,
that's interesting. But,
somebody evoking the sound.
yeah,
But yeah, it had
good job. I thought it was like a real 70s band. I don't know, maybe it is, and I just read something wrong on Spotify, but that's what
Yeah,
it looked
I
like.
felt like it vibed like, I don't know, Boston or some 70s kind
Yeah,
of band.
but it was very different than what Beverly and John Luke were jamming out to in the first episode. But there's still some music in here, so they're gonna keep doing that as a thing. And season 2 had some music too. You did that Mamas and Papas song, yeah, California Dreamin' when they go back in time, and so there's some other stuff. Time is on my side, and
what did Girardi sing?
oh,
It was a cover of something. I mean,
yeah, it was an '80s song.
Oh yeah.
Someone
man.
right now, someone in the comments is saying, and we won't know because
I can open a tab and find that out quietly. Um, let's see.
But
Shadows of the Night.
Shadows of the Night. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There we go.
Yeah. I didn't. It was a song I didn't remember until someone showed me the music video, and I was like, oh yeah, I had seen the music video at some point. But yeah, he's doing like Doctors Without Borders stuff 2 weeks earlier. We don't really know where Dr. Crusher is in that scene, but he is dealing with like some Fenris Rangers that pull him over when he's doing a supply run on a planet. I don't know if you caught this, but he identified as a Mariposa medical vessel Elios 12. Mariposa, we're not going to do Gorn eggs this week either. Sorry, that's what I normally point out the Easter eggs in jokes and continuity connections. But the Mariposa was the medical organization that Rios and his girlfriend, Dr. Teresa, started in. Where I guess she started it before he showed up in the 21st century, but that was their thing.
Oh, that's very cool. I did not know that it was a through line on that. That's actually pretty neat.
And we knew that their organization survived into the 25th century because in season 2 it did show in the first episode of season 2 when 7 of 9 is on La Serena doing Fenris Ranger stuff. There's a crate of like medical supplies or something that's labeled Mariposa. It has a little butterfly logo on it and stuff. Right. So they kind of had planted that seed way back at the beginning of season 2.
But yeah, tying it to somebody so iconic as the Crusher family is pretty notable.
Or the PICARD family, as it might
yeah
appear to be.
The new dynasty, the power couple, or who knows where they're going with this. I really don't know. But what else do we got?
I am glad that season 3 of the show just doesn't abandon everything Picard season 1 and 2 did. Right. As unpopular as those seasons have been with some people. There's a lot of good stuff in there too. I think most of us agree that there is good stuff in there that we didn't want to see just thrown out.
Sure. Laris is sidelined for this. She's on the bench, but she's thought of and still
Yeah,
around.
they gave her that good scene
Raffi
last week.
Raffi's an active participant.
But there's still there's still Fenris Rangers. We don't know a ton about them, but you know, at
This guy
first they
seemed
seem
kind of
cool.
seedy.
Yeah, like I kind of got where he's coming from at first. So like he's gonna let Jack deliver these medical supplies to these people, and also he's selling weapons to rival warlords, but doing it partly because he's thinking like, well, you know, these guys are jerks, and this way they'll kill each other. And then he bribes the Fenris Rangers by, you know, they don't accept the Romulan L as a bribe at first, and then he's like, okay, well, I'll give you a cut of what I sell the phasers to these warlords for. And the Fenris Ranger guys seem to, you know, they think about it for a second. They're like, okay. So it's like, okay, everyone here is a little scoundrelish, but kind of seems like everyone has their hearts in the right place, I guess. And then that's when they sell him out when he's like, you know, contact the marked woman and tell her we found him. And that's what started, I guess, these we don't know, bounty hunting forces, supposedly. That sounds like there's more to that, but whatever, Vadic and her minions are coming after Jack, and him and Bev have been on the run for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I guess we don't know exactly what it was like when they started running. Like these Fenris Rangers reported them, but we don't know, like, did they try and capture them? We didn't see that per se, right?
He just says that the first that come after them were Fenris Rangers, so I guess some Fenris did come after them.
Something must have happened, yeah.
And then he said it was Klingons, and then three guys in Starfleet uniforms that tried to prime directive him into an early grave. This also explains Dr. Crusher's message to John Luke about you trust no one,
Right.
not even Starfleet.
Yep, that's why she's got the lock and load phaser rifle going. she's not trusting people.
And you know, I kind of applauded them giving her a big sequence last week's episode a little bit more now, because this episode she's very important to the story, but not really like does anything other than sleep and then walk onto the bridge.
Right. She is a presence as a memory, but she's also this episode keeps her a mystery because of sci-fi stuff.
It's kind of funny that they have the woman in like this refrigerator thing, like for so much of this episode. There's that whole trope of fridging the women characters.
Yes,
it's like here, like it's like they have her fridged for.
It's
most
a literal
of this
thing. Yeah. Thankfully, you know, that's a trope that kind of comes from the comics world, and basically is like, you know, the girlfriend getting killed to show how rough the bad guy is. Luckily I don't think Beverly will suffer that fate.
No.
But yes, she was quite literally fridged.
There's a lot of high stakes right off the bat in here when the Shrike Vadic ship shows up to the Helios, and you know their only means of escape is that shuttlecraft that gets blown up immediately. I like that it was named after Savick, by the way. I don't know if anyone caught it. It's hard to miss. There's a giant panel that had the word Savick written on it flying towards the screen. But
Yeah, it might have been like a little heavy-handed, but
just a bit.
But yeah, it's a little continuity between eras. I feel like somehow Savick deserves more than a shuttle.
Well, the in-universe explanation for that is that there was a previous Titan ship that was captained by Savick.
Right.
In the late 23rd century. So I would love if that like showed up on screen at some point, because I think that's cool. And I want a novel. I want one of the Star Trek novelists to write that novel of Captain Savick.
I mean, I feel like the novels, I already know that they like touched on her more because she sort of loomed pretty large in the early 80s Trek movies and in some of the best known ones. So that I know there have been novels that have touched on her or had like lost stories about her. But yeah, that's the captaincy. I don't think is probably something that they got around to. I think they were like, well, let's let the movies figure out if they want to reuse her or not, and which turned out to be not. But yeah, really good character. So I'd be down for that. But by the way, that backstory you just said, that was from some of like the Trek logs that they do.
Right. If you go check out the Star Trek logs over on Instagram.
I've only watched one or two, but they are pretty cool. It is like sort of literal text logs, but read aloud by like the character in
Yeah.
question,
Well, or these are read by the
like
computer,
yeah,
but
computer type voice.
because these actors probably didn't want to.
They ain't got time for some Instagram
Yeah,
promotion.
well, they don't have time. I'll put it that way.
But it's legit lore, and it's like if you're into that kind of stuff, you should go check it out.
What did you think in this episode though? Like when the actiony stuff starts happening at the beginning, when they're kind of like, "Hey, Grandpa, what are you doing?" Like to Picard, but he was getting like the transporter inhibitors set up to keep
Oh,
Jack, and that's
was that? Yeah, I guess that was. I was trying to remember when that occurred quite in the episode. That was pretty early on.
yeah.
That was a fairly reasonable level of action, even when Picard had to like pop some caps into the inhibitors. It was kind of what I thought of as fun movie type action.
Dave, did I lose you there? Okay. Um, Sorry. Sounds like Dave cut out. So I think he's back now, though. I'm waiting for Dave to come back. So Dave, if you're back, just let me know. But I thought that was a lot of fun at the beginning with Riker, "Hey kid," tossing one of those plasma charges, and just seeing them kind of get into those actiony rhythms. And
I think I'm back.
okay, cool. I was just telling everyone when Riker's like, "Hey kid, toss me one of those plasma charges."
Yeah, it's kind of like that's old school. That's a pretty Riker thing to do.
It's kind of cool just to see, Riker and Picard, they're getting back in like these actiony rhythms, and then it kind of Jack kind of seems pretty cool. Like I like how much of a bit of a, I don't know, he's kind of like a smart ass
He is.
to the old
He's
man.
a little iconoclastic, I guess, like that. Like he's not standing on ceremony. He doesn't have like huge respect for these guys. And does he know about Picard? The way he jabs.
We don't know what he knows, but
There's a verbal jab later where he's like, "I didn't grow up with a father."
Yeah, he definitely seems like he has some resentment to Picard, but he seems that he seems to know a lot about him, I guess, because he tells him, here at that beginning, he's like, "History remembers you with one less pip on your collar." When he was calling him Captain at first, and Picard corrects him, Admiral. So then after that, anytime he addresses him the rest of the episode, he always says like Admiral, like really sarcastically, like when he's like,
Yeah.
he's like, "Great rescue, Admiral," when they're like taking him to the brig.
I've got a son who's trying to kill me. But yeah, I thought it was all pretty reasonable action. Like, Picard wasn't like doing parkour flips with a stunt double around the bridge. He was doing kind of fun movie stuff, taking some shots at those transporter inhibitors, which those are the ones that like were invented as a concept on DS9, right?
No, those for shit up on TNG.
Oh, TNG. Okay. But yeah, it's they've had a long lifespan then.
Yeah, there's transport boosters, transport inhibitors. So, um, Shaw, you were saying you like Shaw a bit more here. He's debating with Seven of Nine. Seven wants to go into the nebula and rescue them. They're like, "Oh my god, this scary ass ship showed up, and they're gonna be defenseless." And Shaw is reluctant. And as an audience member, I'm like, "Come on, Shaw, go save the good guys. What are you doing?" But when he's like, "Look, we're an exploratory vessel. We're not equipped to go up against this warship. I can't put 500 people on my ship in danger over two people." I was like, "Oh, okay. I kind of think, yeah, you probably shouldn't get your 500 people killed on this rescue mission." So, it's like, man, like this guy has a point sometimes, even though when I don't want him to.
Yeah, I have somewhat mixed feelings still about that because I think sometimes it's slightly calling out Trek's own tradition of just, bold captains and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, we don't want to like imagine that every time they were being bold and engaging with danger, that they were being, reckless. We kind of know that, and so the fact that, but he's presented as a guy who doesn't really buy into their hype and who thinks that of them at least as mavericks, and so in that sense, I think it works. But I don't like calling out the show's own tropes, and I feel like it edges up against that a little bit.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I disagree because I think Star Trek is kind of famous for, like, it's not just A or B, like there's like nuance and gray areas, and some
Sure.
things are complicated, and yeah, like, maybe it is right to, prioritize your 500 crew members on your ship, but also, maybe it is right to go and do some dangerous stuff to save other people, and like where do you make your choice and stuff. I think Star Trek has kind of a history of
it
showing that.
likes it does like to look in on its own tropes sometimes. So, and this is arguably another Star Trek II connection of many, which Savick forms another one, which is sort of, or maybe almost more Trek 3, because it's a needs of the one outweigh maybe the needs
Mm,
of the many. Picard is putting that energy and risk and risk. He and Riker are putting a lot of people at risk to save an old friend who they don't know what exactly is happening to her.
right.
Does he even know how? What did she say about the danger level, or did she say there's a danger? Did she even indicate that?
I mean, she was like,
She was scared.
trust no one, and yeah, and then Laris was like, I'm an intelligence officer, and this woman was terrified out of her freaking mind.
Yeah, but yeah, arguably Picard.
I think it was just the fact that she called him at all. He was like, if she called me, it was for something serious.
Right, we haven't talked in about 20 years, so
Yeah.
yeah. I think that Shaw is still in kind of jerk mode at this point. He's like
Hmm.
talking about how this is the end of Seven's career, although he starts easing back on that a little bit
Oh
during the
yeah.
course of the episode, and um, and he wasn't chewing in this one. I didn't have to see him eating blue steak, and so that's really a big win for me.
No close-ups of food going into mouths.
God. If you want me to know somebody is kind of gross and creepy, I guess that did it.
And he's kind of funny, when they show up to beam them on board, and someone on the bridge is like, "Oh, there's actually 4 life signs, one very faint, and then there's this other dude on there." So he's like, "Ah, just we're basically a hotel now. I guess just beam them all on board."
Yeah, it's funny how much something like that can kind of win me over. A sort of sarcastic put upon person who's not just all. It's not just everything is venom. He's a little resigned. He's like, oh my god, at this point, and that was a kind of a winning moment there. I liked it.
And when Vatic opens hailing frequencies to the Titan and kind of introduces herself to the audience as well as the characters. We get some more tidbits about Shaw when she's saying things like, "Oh, Captain Liam Shaw, I'm glad you remained functional after what I read about in your psych profile."
Right? She seems to know stuff. She's
Yeah.
like she knows how to dig up dirt, or she's got some good resources, and her indication is that something, we don't know what, traumatic happened to Shaw in the
I'm
past.
gonna assume Borg related because
Probably so,
we talked about last week. He's definitely has some anti-Borg biases
for sure.
or
Yep,
biases.
I think that is almost certainly the case.
Also, we know that Vatic is off her rocker immediately because her greeting is "Good afternoon." At least I believe it's afternoon in the solar system. It's like solar systems don't have afternoons. Like it's always the afternoon somewhere.
Um, yeah, I guess she means local time somewhere on Earth within the Sol system.
I just
But
I just took it to mean she's a bit cuckoo.
she's definitely what you would call eccentric.
Well, we know
Uh,
she's bad because she smokes in Star Trek.
there is more smoking in this episode than I think in the last 20 years of Star Trek. There's
Rios had a lot of synthagars in seasons 1 and 2.
That didn't count because retroactively I knew that it was fake robot smoke. No, but yeah, like we'll later see Sneed with his like hookah, and I
Yeah.
guess some sort of randos in the background too, and on where is it that Raffi is?
Metallus Prime.
Metalis Prime. But yeah, they are definitely using it as kind of a like I think I'm guessing they did it for two reasons. One is it gives her some visual energy that we've seen a lot of chatty villains before, kind of out gregarious villains
Yeah.
who just have to be on screen just talking shit, con style. And this gives her something interesting extra to do with her hands, blowing smoke and all that stuff. And I think it works pretty well. I kind of don't like the idea of like smoking equal bad guy, smoking equal seedy all the time. And Rios, I guess, is at least a good counterexample to that. But yes, in this case, it added to her kind of skeevy atmosphere.
Well, she throws a ship at them. So
Right.
that was neat.
Yeah, this is slightly that sort of this was like one of apparently they're armed to the teeth, right? They easily
Yeah.
outmatch
Isolinic burst warheads, antimatter missiles. There's some big mystery weapon that I think might be the portal thing from the first episode, but
Oh, the mystery weapon wasn't the reverse tractor beam thing?
it could have been. It was just like something large in the main primary bay. We don't know what it is.
How does a bounty hunter have a ship that outdoes a Starfleet? I know it's not like, maybe a flagship, but it's exploratory, but it's like, yeah, those are
They
usually
made a big deal about it being like a top of the line, just got refit. This fast ass warp 9.99 engine.
and Shaw's like, just yeah, we're outmatched. There's
Yeah.
not even in his mind. There's just not a chance. Um, yeah, I hope they have a good explanation for that, and it's not just like, well, she's just a very effective bounty hunter, because like bounty hunters don't usually go around in like massive military vessels. Like that
Yeah,
seems a little.
I think there's more to Jack than just he's a wanted criminal and there's bounty hunters coming
probably
after him.
so.
Because yeah, we talked about like how did she have like all these resources? The Fenris Rangers are calling in tips to her hotline. Apparently,
Right?
she was sending Klingons and people who appeared to be Starfleet officers and
Bounty hunters are usually they usually don't have a ton of money. They're usually chasing the next bounty, at least somewhat. And but she's apparently throwing around what must be a lot of latinum or favors or promises or something to have so many people informing for her. But to get back to what you said, tractor beam chunk. Yes, I always kind of enjoy seeing something you haven't seen. They like to do that in the movies, whether it's like, what was it? What Star Trek in the Kelvin verse had those little things that punched through the ship? The
Beyond
Yeah,
had
yeah.
the swarm ships.
The swarm ships, but that's just a random example. There's special weapons, in all of them. Oh, undetectable, cloaked Klingon ship, all that kind of stuff. And this one is pretty cool and visually cool. They got a ship thrown at them. I thought it was gonna like impact and like just decimate them so bad that they were dead in space. Hull intact maybe, but just fucked.
I thought when the shit was coming towards them, I was like, oh, now Sydney Crash LaForge is gonna do some badass piloting and like get them out, and like, oh no, the ship's just gonna get hit, just
Yeah,
smacked.
this was a scene that was about showing the bad guys have some assets. But I guess she did, like
She had a
essentially
cool line after that.
she scraped it only scraped the paint, ruptured some stuff. It like didn't explode against them. So I guess kudos to
Yeah.
her for not having it explode against them.
It was a bit of a warning shot because
Right.
she's asking them, okay, I'll give you 1 hour to turn them over. But I did like when Sydney LaForge was like, my dad taught me there's no law of physics that can't be broken or weaponized by another law. And I think Shaw's kind of like, oh, okay, cool, but it doesn't really help our situation.
We're not that kind of ship.
Quit name dropping your dad, Sydney. Jesus, you do this all the time.
That is an hour is honestly very generous. Khan and Krug gave them a couple minutes, a minute or
Yeah, I'll give you I'll give. Was it he? Kirk asked
60
for
seconds
10?
for your valiant crew.
Or,
Or
yeah. He gave him more. It was kind
he
of a
gave him a
power
little bit more than
move, but
Khan. But if we are looking for more parallels to Wrath of Khan, and they have invited them by acknowledging some of
I
them.
don't think anytime you give a ship a time limit, that's a Rathacon thing.
Okay, yes, I'm not doing this as seriously as like ding, but she is scenery chewing in the style of Khan, and that included a turn over something to me or die like Khan, and a time limit. They're drawing on Khan. I think that's safe to say that some of her presence draws on Khan. Krug's, arguably did too, but Krug didn't have a bunch of other references to it. So I stand by it, sir.
Well, this is when Shaw relieves Seven of duty, and he kind of has like the rap sheet on Jack Crusher or Jack Crusher Jr.
Why did
Whatever
he
you want to
relieve
call him, but
Seven? What prompted it?
from what she did in the first episode.
Okay. He was just like, this is too much.
Yeah. But I was at this point. I was hoping like, oh, maybe he's not actually like named Jack Crusher. Maybe he's actually John Candy or John Carson or James Cole or Jarvis Carvel or whatever all those names were. I was like, oh, maybe he's just like some random con artist who like was teaming up with Dr. Crusher for, because I didn't want David Marcus the Next Generation, even though it looks like he might be actually like the son of Picard and Crusher. I'm still hoping.
What movie was that in again?
Yes, the Wrath of Khan.
Okay, just checking. Yes, no, but I agree with you. It wasn't a plot I was looking forward to.
The thing is, Dave, you gotta play fair with that, and like anytime they reference something other than the Wrath of Khan, you gotta point it out just as much.
No, I do not. I'm not saying it exclusively references Wrath of Khan. I wouldn't do that. And I'm not saying that even that there's an innately bad quality to it. I kind of need to see where it goes. I don't know if they like want to draw up its thematics. It's one of the reasons I was a little nervous about the first episode, though. And I think you had some misgivings too. Well, if you're going to reference one movie more than the others, and I think it's safe to say they're doing that. Is there a reason? Is there a thematic tie-in? Nemesis did it, and I don't think people love Nemesis for having done it. The fact that people are so on board this, I think, shows that their references are probably going to be more meaningful.
Yeah, Star Trek 09 is pretty guilty of that, and then of course Star Trek Into Darkness as well.
Well, it's the best Trek movie, so I get the influence. Anyway, where were you going, Father? What else were you saying about? About Jack Crusher.
Riker's reaction, I thought, was so realistic. They do such a good job with Riker in this show. That's really impressed me. But just like that turbo lift scene, when Riker is like, okay, why are you dancing around this? It's kind of obvious. Like, let's just be honest with each other. We got this. Dr. Crusher has a kid with a British accent, and every now and then he has a French word. Like, does that remind you of anyone familiar? Like, come on.
I like that that the show had the good taste to not actually have him say the words, like that any audience members should understand what he was getting at.
Yeah.
But yes, it's such it's a very Riker thing to do, and we talked briefly off mic about this. You pointed out that what Riker does as follow-up is just a great first officer move and a total Riker move. Like, when you said that, I was like, man, you're right. That's actually one of the coolest things in the episode, and I hadn't quite lensed it that way, which you can say more in a minute or right now if you want.
Well, and it's hard as like a character being a first officer. That's a hard thing to play as an actor. That's a hard thing for writers to write for. I remember Ron Moore brought this up on a Battlestar Galactica commentary track I listened to once upon a time, but he was talking about Colonel Ty in that show. That show's Riker. That show's first officer.
Mm.
He was talking about like, yeah, like, years of the next generation trying, write stuff for Riker to do, and it's like you can't give him too much importance because then then the captain's not doing the big important stuff. But then okay, well, what's the first officer role? Like, you're not going to give him like the engineering thing that goes to Geordi, the medical stuff goes to Crusher. So it's like, what do you do? What do you have him do that's like still important and make him seem like an active player and participant in your story? And Frakes, it's funny to me that Frakes was reluctant to return to Riker in season 1 of Picard because he hadn't done any acting in many years, and he felt like his acting muscles were rusty, were out of shape, and hadn't been exercised, and he wouldn't be able to like hold his own next to the active actors that had been acting for years. And and he just looks great, seeing him back in uniform. But I've been really happy with the Riker stuff in these 2 episodes.
Yeah, it's almost like, he needn't have worried, essentially. He comes back into it naturally, and I don't mean that to say that he's not putting a lot of skill into it. But yeah, whatever, whether he had to play the character a bit to get back in the swing of things, whether it ended up coming naturally, unexpectedly to him, or whatever, like, yeah, there's just no doubt this is Riker.
He had that one like really cool line, that real simple line, but when they're talking to Jack in the brig and Riker says, if there's one place in the universe I don't want to be, it's on my back foot.
Yeah.
When they're just like, come on, son, like, tell us about yourself. And I don't know, like, he's done crimes on Andoria and Bynor, so he's a bit of like a Han Solo scoundrel type. And if you just showed this to me on paper, it's like, oh, look, we have this long lost son of, I guess, I'm still hoping there's a twist to it or something, but oh, look, we have this long lost son of Crusher and Picard, but he's kind of like this like Han Solo scoundrel who's off, doing these good deeds in the galaxy, but he's doing them with attitude and crime and a bit of fun and all. And I'd be like, okay, this sounds not great. This sounds like you're trying too hard. I don't know, but seeing the execution of it, I'm like, oh my God, I like this character. I like everyone else's reactions to this.
And the way they've somewhat contextualized things we only saw on the surface in the first one leads me to think, okay, there are some more reveals to come about. We know that the whole Beverly hasn't talked to anybody in 20 years, although it sort of stands in for the fact that, yeah, she wasn't on previous seasons of this show. That it has to acknowledge that. But there's a story reason, right? There's stuff to be revealed about that, and I really hope they come through with it. It's got
to be a damn good reason.
It does. It can't just be because somebody said the wrong thing. It's got to be because she has some secret mission she's doing, or
and it can't be too far fetched. It can't feel like too like fake and contrived. It's got to seem kind of believable.
The Crusher, I know, who would like save the terrorist in that one episode of TNG and get herself in hot water. Is a person who, if she found out that she could do something she could do could, like, say, benefit a large population, a planet, a nation, something like that, but it was something only she could do, that it required her to be there, and she couldn't interact with the outside world because, it could reveal that this planet was completely unprotected to, enemies or something like that, while she slowly got the population through a pandemic or whatever. She would do that. Like, I do believe that, and I hope that that's where the writers are thinking, that she was doing something where the greater good required it of her.
Well, he says that she's changed a lot, that she's different. When Picard is saying things like, "Oh, this is why I know you're lying. She'd never go along." When he says that all the stuff that he's been doing, all these, kind of like Robin Hood. He's like a Robin Hood character. I said Han Solo, but Robin Hood might be more accurate.
Sure.
He's doing crimes to do humanitarian work.
Right.
I guess that's very, very strong parallel to Robin Hood. but when he's saying like yeah, like she was my partner all along, and who are you, like he's like mad. He's like, why did you never check in on mom, dad? Like you hadn't even talked to her in all these years. When was the last time you even spoke to my mother? So yeah, it does seem like he's a son when he's like getting, angry and snippy with Picard like that. And that's when they get that conversation you brought up earlier, the who is your father? I never had one.
Right,
So
right. Yeah, he clearly has some resentment built up.
it almost, they could have easily gone off the deep end with that, and it would have felt a little like, oh, too whiny teenager, which a lot of it's very easy to do in your storytelling, is you kind of get like a whiny teenager vibes, but they avoided that, and they made him seem heroic when he was willing to sacrifice himself, when he wanted to turn himself over.
That's a big thing. Also, when he was interacting with the Fenris Rangers early on, he seemed like a guy who knew his business. Like he wasn't like
Yeah,
some green, green kid who's didn't kind of know what's up.
this
I was like,
ain't
oh,
his first rodeo.
this guy's kind of pretty slick at what he does, and I think is like sort of a better version of like an Okana type
Oh
character.
yeah, yeah.
Certainly, he's got an actual. He does seem to have an ethos and a morality to what he's doing to his outlaw stuff.
Why would I ever bring up Han Solo when I could have brought up the outrageous Okana himself? But you're
Sadly,
right, Dave.
for all of Prodigy's good qualities, they still haven't quite redeemed Okana.
We'll
I'm
see
willing to give him
season
more.
2. So,
Yeah, we'll give him more chance.
but you're right. That scene, it did make him seem pretty clever and smart. The way when he's like, we even have like some Romulan L, and all the stuff we're happy to share. Kind of slyly offering the bribe, and then when that
Yeah,
doesn't go through, when the guy is like, "You're trying to offer me," he's like, "No, I would bribe you with these phasers over here." So it's like,
right,
okay, this is his sales pitch. He's done this before. Yeah.
right.
Um,
He's not going to be thrown off his game by a kind of scary Fenris Ranger either. And that guy had like a scary face.
Before we talk about our ending and kind of the big emotional dramatic event that we've been teasing, that we'll get to eventually, and then a bit of a cliffhanger there with a bit of action. But before we get to that, let's leave the Righton system alone and talk about Metalis Prime and the Operation Daybreak, Raffi's intelligence mission is what it's
Yep.
called on the computer displays. But yeah, the Raffi, and now we know her handler Worf. So that kind of obvious, but that was fun just to make us, I think, anticipate them in this episode. Was kind of teasing them so much in the first one.
I think we've talked over the years about sort of the bad influence, not from his Star Trek thing, but J.J. Abrams' mystery box thing,
Uh,
that can actually be a a problem and not a great plot device. Um, so I don't think every mystery needs to be something that has like a really wildly satisfying reveal where it's like the end of The Usual Suspects or some movie where it's like it all builds to it. So I think it was okay that, I mean, it's a testament to how cool his entry was that Worf's arrival didn't feel like, oh, yeah, it was Worf like we expected. You were like, because he kind of rolled up on the party right at the, he got to do the hero thing, and he just started chopping dudes down in classic Worf fashion, as he really has done quite a number of times on the Enterprise itself, like, which normally is not a place you're allowed to chop people.
Yeah, I guess Worf was always slashing people with his swords and stuff, just never shown as graphically as it was now. But they can do that on
Although it was
streaming
also a
shows.
little bit through Raffi, because she did like the God, what's that movie? Training Day.
Training Day.
She did the Training Day thing. She did some drugs to maintain her cover, which, because we know that Sneed was like had probably sussed her out by that point. He knew that she
Yeah,
was lying about who's it? There's a scapegoat for the terrorist attack. Who's
yeah.
a
The
Romulan,
Romulan terrorist named Toluco,
right?
Mark Toluco.
And he happens to know she's not working for him because he's got Toluco's severed head in the office with him, like you do, and that's some big, larger than life stuff. But I really liked how that guy played his villainy. He seemed like a pretty on top of things bad guy in his few minutes that he got. He was pretty scary for a Ferengi dude. with his
Yeah,
evil hookah.
I got super excited when I saw the Ferengi on screen because I was like, oh, they did such a great job with this little, holographic wanted poster. This Ferengi named Sneed. He looks like such a good reinterpretation of a classic Ferengi design, and I like this more than how they were doing the Ferengi on Disco season 4. And yeah, that's really cool. Too bad he's just going to be this little, probably just CGI'd this image, just kind of photoshopped this. It's not. We're probably not going to actually see the guy. And then a few minutes later, you see the guy. I was like, oh, that's cool. And yeah, he was a good villain. He was very creepy and intimidating, and he wasn't a goofball Ferengi like they can
Oh.
sometimes be.
Oh. Who was that one Ferengi when they did the Magnificent Ferengi team up? Who was like the killer guy who did seem kind of dangerous?
Oh, Lek,
The what do they call him? The Annihilator or
the
something or
Eliminator.
Eliminator? Yeah, yeah.
Did you
This guy
say
is
ship? That guy.
yes. Um, if you're only going to get like 5-10 minutes of screen time, this actor playing him made the most of it, and I thought he was a good presence up until Worf beheaded him.
We're not gonna do Gorn eggs this week, so sorry about that. But the Slugo Cola, he pulled out a little Slugo Cola, the slimiest cola in the galaxy. And he had a baseball too. He's talking about he liked to collect things and let them get old and vintage and become valuable. He had a baseball up on the shelves with his other things. I don't think that was Cisco's baseball. I don't think that this guy actually got his greedy little mitts on that. I hope not, though. That would break my heart.
I'm not gonna fixate on this overly, Fatheree, but that's another kind of Trek 2 thematic, at least. Is
To
they
reference the
have
Deep Space Nine thing.
no the question about like things getting old and like
Oh,
what defines us. The first episode focused on Picard getting rid of some of like his old stuff. We saw what Beverly had kept.
yeah.
It reminded me of Kirk's old book. What was it? It was a Dickens thing.
The
Tale
Two
of Two
Cities.
Cities. Yeah, or even his glasses. There was a sense of sort of the vintage things that make up Kirk, but also that he was a bit of a fossil stuck in the past. Maybe age was catching up with him. That was the major thematic of the whole movie, was like
Hmm.
death on the horizon and all of that. And I don't know if they're gonna play that with this, but I don't think it was a coincidence, or not a coincidence. I don't think it was random that what do you call it? What's the name of that Ferengi?
Sneed.
That Sneed mentioned that. Whatever thematic they're building to uh, does seem to have something to do with time, mementos, how we hang on to the past or don't. I think that might have just been a little tip to whatever theme they're building.
Well, Vatic is also talking about, like it's been centuries since time was measured by the movement of gears, but tick tock, your time is running out, or whatever.
Oh yeah, yeah. So
You,
I'll
you
kind of
know,
be looking for those sort of things to recur as the series goes on.
my hope is that the show actually ends up becoming a message more similar to Star Trek 6 than Star Trek 2, which with Star Trek 6, it was also talking about like being old, but Star Trek 6 was basically like, like we're so old, it's probably like the best thing we can do is just like retire. And then, yeah, sometimes like you need to know when to let go and let like the new, young, fresh idea minds, bust onto the scene and let them take over. And yeah, because
Right?
you're going to be like old and racist against Klingons, and sometimes you need like the younger generation to come in and do better. So I am hoping for that kind of ending, which
Sure.
is, I don't know if we're in, because we do kind of live in like the age of nostalgia. I don't know if people actually have an appetite for stories about like, oh, we're actually gonna like let things end with our heroes and let new characters take over. But that's what I'm hoping that we build towards.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. I like that they're playing with a toolkit that includes some symbolic elements. They always do. Even if we're talking about like we noticed that butterfly in season 2 and,
Yeah.
and other thematic stuff. So it'll be kind of interesting and fun to connect the dots and see what they're headed to. Yeah, maybe we can suss it out in advance.
But also on this Raffi stuff, I love that Terry Metalis did not just forget about Seven of Nine and Raffi. That they're still very active, very engaged in the show and the story.
I guess when she was undercover in the previous episode, she's like, my girlfriend left me. Do we, I guess, take that part at least to have been true, even though she was doing it as cover story stuff?
I don't think so. I think that's part of her.
I mean, they're not together.
Thing.
They're definitely not literally together. We know whatever. Either they have a long distance relationship, or they're kind of on the outs, at least on a break, maybe.
Because like they didn't tell us that they broke up for real. I don't see a reason to assume that just yet, but I would be disappointed if that does turn out to be the case. I don't think they would do that though. Just
she seems angsty. Like they definitely wanted to tease. They teased straight up that she had fallen off the wagon in the first episode. But even then, like even when we're like, oh shit, no, she's got stuff together, but we see she's still hurting. That and I do like that they have indicated that people can have trauma that doesn't get resolved on Star Trek. Even in a pretty good future, that's something that some people are going to carry around and struggle more with. I actually really liked the scenes with her ex-husband in this one.
Yeah, Jay, who just in his brief little introduction, we learn a little bit about him. Like, oh, he's a former addict. He runs a bar, so I guess he's a bit into the skeevy criminal underworld, but he's an artist, so he's got a bit of like that creative artistic soul, and unlike Raffi, he prioritized their son Gabe. It sounded like when they were struggling with addiction or whatever previously, but
that's what helped him. That's what helped him get clean.
Yeah, and Raffi instead was crazed and obsessed with conspiracies. That was so tragic and heart-wrenching when, from his perspective, I get where he's coming from. Like, what are you talking about, woman? You're telling me you're not using, but you look like you are, and you're saying you have to go after this conspiracy, who destroyed the building, but on the news they're saying that they know the Romulan who did it. So like, no, I'm not gonna play along with your weird Alex Jones conspiracy theories again. If you want to be in our son's life, then show me right now that you're willing to make him the priority, and not like your weird Starfleet conspiracies. And like from her perspective, 117 people died. She has to choose meeting Sneed over contacting her son.
Yeah, I don't think he necessarily offered a fair choice to her there, but I do think that it's the kind of thing that a person who's been through all the things that he has with her and doesn't maybe look on her, with he's not perfectly objective.
She's burnt those bridges.
Yeah, so. She somewhat earned it, and so I think it's a very human and fair moment. Like it definitely felt like something a person would do.
But for her, it really sucks, and for us, watching it from her perspective, it really sucks.
That was rough. It's another case. This is, I felt like, for me at least, I don't know if I could articulate why, but there were more scenes in this than in the first episode, many more for me, where in just a few minutes, a scene kind of sang more than it did in the first one. So it was Sneed's villainy, it was the humanity and kind of painfulness of their relationship, and Raffi and her ex's scene. Like I was like, oh, that was a really good scene. So yeah, I just felt like those were starting to hit their stride.
Yeah, the Sneed scene was obviously my favorite because of the cool stuff with Worf, but it was a really fun scene to rewatch, and you can kind of now that you know everything about Sneed that's conveyed when it's all said and done, it's fun to go back and revisit that sequence. And when she says, I know that it wasn't Toluco because I work for Toluco, you kind of see Sneed he kind of smiles a little. That's when he's like, oh, do you? Like he knows he's got that head in the the chest behind him. And he's like, right. Oh, do you work for Toluca? Okay, I'm just gonna sit here and watch this and see how it plays out.
Right. When you're first watching it, you're like, oh, he's just being a skeptical crime boss. This is how he made it to the top, is by not taking everybody at their word. But yeah, on second viewing, you're like, oh, he knows instantly right there that she's lying to him and has some ulterior motive, and he's probably going to need to kill her. She doesn't know it, but he does.
The Worf rescue was great, and then I love
he looked great. He looked fantastic. We got to see, was it Silver Targ?
Worf, yeah.
Worf.
Our friend Robbie says he looks like a Dahar master, like Core in DS9. I think that's fit. It'd be cool if he is a Dahar master, whatever the hell that means.
Yeah, I hope that'd be awesome to hear. But yes, Fatheree, I believe you pointed out that Worf kind of in his way kind of has to do the little bit of the last word, a little bit of
Yeah.
bragging rights. What does he say to
I
Raffi?
told you, do not engage. He's like, yeah, Worf is gonna let you know when he was right. So
Yep.
all those years of being shut down by Picard, like, no, Worf, that's wrong. It's like, okay, the one time when he's right, he's gonna make sure everyone knows it.
Yeah, even in those days, he always spoke with conviction. He was always pretty assured. Like when he would have like some Klingon episode or Deep Space Nine stuff. So yeah.
It was fun, seeing the dialogue, the text messages coming from the handler when we still weren't 100% if it was Worf.
Sure.
But just reading it all in his voice when she's like, there's 117 dead, and he's like, 118 should you continue, do not join the dead. It's just, yeah, it's like all clearly Worf dialogue.
Right. What I kind of liked about that, and why I thought it was a fun mystery to maybe let the audience kind of have figured out, was that, sometimes like in these sort of movie scenarios where you're contacting a handler, well, they just talk in sort of more terse terms. They're like, can't stay online long, and they just talk a little more tersely. But yes, it works perfectly because that's exactly how Worf talks in real life.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing more of them. I don't now Raffi, now that she's I guess like has to turn in her 5-year chip or whatever. I don't know what the rules are on if you're
Yeah,
undercover and have to shoot up or whatever, but
that's rough. I mean,
shoot drugs
like,
into your eyes. But
it's the kind of thing that I don't know what that specific drug was supposed to, how its
yeah,
addictive qualities were
Splinter
supposed to
that
work. But
Sneed made.
it's
It's
the
a
kind of
made
thing
up
that could
space drug, but
completely derail your life, right? This
yeah.
could have somebody like, oh, I will now spiral back into addiction. I don't think that is going to happen with her, but like how she deals with it will be interesting to see.
Yeah, and maybe it'll give Old Man Worf something cool to do if he's like trying to like help her, like, deal with those. Like, I don't know, how would Worf deal with a situation like that? I'm
You ever
kind of
seen
curious to see this.
the movie Black Snake Moan,
Yeah,
Fatheree?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Worf
Samuel
would
L.
chain
Jackson.
her to a radiator.
Is he
Like,
gonna bust out the
he's
guitar and play blues music? Because I'm here for that. That's the Star Trek I want.
this super swear-filled blues song that
Yeah,
Sam Jackson does in that.
yeah.
I honestly, I would love something like that. That'd be messed up. I really like that movie. But I feel like Worf is a cold turkey kind of guy.
Well, I guess we'll find out.
But
But
this is I don't know if they would do this, but we did talk about also when we were talking about Deep Space Nine. That that meme that goes around where it's like a Klingon, I guess it's Martok, congratulating someone on like their victory over mental illness or depression and things like that as an unwinnable battle that you fight every day, and it's a kind of an uplifting Klingon meme. And I was like, oh, well, we might actually be about to see how Worf might handle something like that. I don't know if that's what the story is interested in. May well not be where they go with it, but we might actually see how does a Klingon warrior face addiction. We'll see.
they've teased that maybe not all the legacy characters survive season 3, and a lot of people are kind of freaking out about that. They don't want anyone to die. I'm okay with a good death, but I think Worf is kind of an obvious contender because that's actually a happy ending. Is if you give him a glorious death, that's like best case scenario for
Off to
his character.
Stovacor.
Yeah, like I kind of want to know in my heart that Worf just didn't I don't know, just like die in his bed as an old man, because he would hate that. I want him to have like the big glorious epic death.
You don't want him going where Martok looked like he was gonna go.
Yeah. So I think maybe if they do kill Worf, not saying they will, I'm just speculating, that's a possibility. It's on the table. If that were to happen, I think it'd be cool if he did like kind of teach Raffi something or kind of inspire her in some way or something, and then like she kind of carries on his legacy. What if like she starts wearing his baldric after he's gone or something? And like in the future
cool.
they just like have her in like some Star Trek shows, but she has like the House of Martok baldric or something like that. I think would be real neat.
Worf is primed for a dramatic ending, his good day to die. So yes, it seems like it could work there. At the same time, the character feels like he's the kind of guy. We have seen some great old Klingons, right?
Yeah.
Was it Martok, Core, all of those dudes?
Yeah, King was great.
Kang. Yeah, it's so there's a history of it, and they could do a spin-off miniseries or something like that. So I will be sad if it happens, but yeah, you're right. It would suit him.
Yeah, we could be happy for Worf, but
Yeah.
sad for ourselves.
He'd be like, "I'm coming, Jadzia."
Yeah. Oh, wouldn't that be beautiful if that's what he says right as he dies?
Oh my god, my heart would break if that happened.
I guess if we're done on Metallus Prime, let's talk about like the big ending.
Sure.
When Jack escapes, that they love reminding us that he's British. Last week it was the it was like the piss poor job, chaps, and here it's like, oi, Starfleet. but yeah, he was able to bust out with his little wrist device. And, he runs to the transporter room, and the cool thing Picard points out, like, yeah, he's not trying to escape. He's trying to turn himself over. He's trying to save the rest of us, save his mom. And in sickbay, cool to see a Trill doctor and an Orion nurse. It's like, yes, I very much feel like I'm watching Star Trek. That's fun. A lot of Orions in Starfleet these days, but the sickbay thing.
I like that we don't see that, Orions aren't all gangsters. I'm happy to see that.
They make a point of that in Lower Decks with Tindy, with a big episode in season 3. But Riker, asked the doctor, like, what's going on with her? Is she like heavily sedated? And the doctor's like, yeah. And Riker's like, well, I'm gonna wake her up. And this is the big moment that I pointed out to you when Riker knows what Picard needs to do. He's like, okay, what do I need to do to help Picard take command of the situation and do the right thing? And he's like, okay, what I need to do is get these two together. I don't know how to solve the situation on my own, but I know if I get my friend Beverly in the same room with my friend John Luke, that he'll be able to set things right. And yeah, he wasn't the captain. He was Picard's first officer in that moment.
Right. A quintessential first officer moment, and not like an obvious thing to do. Generally speaking, if like Beverly Crusher probably would be like, this person is sedated. Back in the day, she would be like, no, you can't wake them up.
Yeah.
Ironically, she was the one who had to be awakened. But yeah, that was a boss move on his part, and it leads to maybe one of the most poignant scenes in all of the Picard, seasons.
Oh my god! Yeah,
a wordless scene.
Yeah, she doesn't say anything this whole episode. All she does is just stand there and look at him, and he looks at her, and just their faces tell the story.
Right. It's funny because the way Picard's face sort of like falls, like he's overcome with emotion, is what it sort of seemed to me.
Yeah.
And I, for a minute, I actually, since we just watched the episode where they're, what's the one where their minds are joined?
Oh, Attached. Yeah, another Patreon watch party that we did in the past.
Yeah, that was super fun and neat. It was a build up to this. We knew they were going to get back together, or they were going to at least interact.
Yeah.
For a minute I was like, did they actually just convey something telepathically? Like just right out of that episode? Is there some residual? But no, it was of course meant to be. They've known each other for so long that when they look at each other, they cannot lie. And so yeah, it's all over their faces.
Yeah, I'm starting to tear up now just like hearing you describe it, Dave.
And Picard comes to terms with it, he accepts it as truth. When he sees it that Jack Crusher is his son.
And it's so cool that like this whole episode, no one ever says, like you were saying like earlier, like they didn't spell it out for the audience. Yeah, like we're clever enough, that we're gonna understand what's going on. But it makes it more powerful when in that moment when Picard when Shaw's like, why are you doing this? And he's like, because he's my son. Yeah. It's like me, like the number one hater of like, I don't want David Marcus the next generation. Like I cannot look at that and not just completely unapologetically accept it. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Yep. I mean, that's how I felt like about, say, some of the Q stuff in season 2 of Star Trek, where I might have questioned, something of the nature of Q's plot and machinations, how some of the plots got from point A to point B. But when it came down to saying goodbye to Q, I was just like too overcome by the writing and the acting and all that, and I was like, I accept it. This is super good, right? In this moment, at least, I'm completely on board.
And because it did like the emotional work there, it is so earned. The sequence we get immediately after that, when he turns into the admiral, when he's like, lock it down, the boy stays here, and all that stuff, and
Yeah.
and even Jack, he's kind of doing that Cardassian standoff is what we call it now from our DS9 discussion, instead of a Mexican standoff, Cardassian standoff. But Seven and Jack, when they have phasers pointed at each other on the transporter pad, even he like just lowers his phaser and gives up trying to turn himself in. He's like
Yep.
Picard dropped the dad voice.
And Shaw, who was so prickly that he
Yes.
had no hesitation in the previous episode about over dinner saying, no, we're not doing that to these guys, is like his only he questions what Picard is doing. He's not happy about it,
Yeah.
but he immediately defers to him.
Yeah, even Shaw concedes. Like because he saw that same scene that we saw. Like that's how good it was. It's
Yeah.
And I love Picard's reaction to Shaw when Shaw just kind of collapses, kind of defeated into his chair, and he's just like, whatever happens next, Admiral, is on you. And he's pissed. And there's somehow Picard just like patted him on the shoulder.
Right.
I mean, you could say it's kind of condescending, but I viewed it as kind of like paternal and kind of a warm way. But he's like, good job, son. I understand you were just trying to look out for your ship and your crew.
It's a little bit of that Englishman is like, buck up, it's going to be all right.
Yeah.
Kind of vibe to it. So yeah, that's something else that can win me over. If you end an episode strong, and there was a lot of strong stuff at the end of that episode,
And then the fan service thing they did, if so well earned, when like to kick off the action, the action and the cliffhanger, he did the catchphrase. Picard said, "Engage." And that's when they shot the torpedoes at Vadic and hauled ass into the nebula. And they're like, well, if she wants us, she's gonna have to come find us. And giddy Vadic laughing her ass off, like, follow them.
Yes, just clearly pretty confident, possibly overconfident.
But it was so fun.
It's fun to end an episode with the energy of the chase is on.
Yeah.
And they kind of like that first episode had a fair number of kind of like, oh, we're getting old jokes. Or not even always necessarily jokes. Sometimes it's just real.
Yeah.
But to see Picard kind of step into this, kind of full on, not missing a beat, in command and ready to give it his all, was pretty powerful. It's a great way to end. It's why I think sometimes, we know shows will sometimes do a thing where it's like, oh, they've released episodes 1 and 2 at the same time, and or released the first 3 episodes because they kind of form an arc. Like, I do actually kind of wish they had released episodes 1 and 2, because I think that I would have recontextualized the first episode, probably having seen kind of how things go in the second episode, and I would have lensed it more kindly, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. Not everyone is going to be patient, especially these days when there's so much content, and we all have access to more hours of television than any of us will ever watch.
And frankly, I had misgivings having seen all of season 1 and all of season 2 of Picard. I didn't feel that they always took the right steps. I had consistent issues, even though I was also enjoying plenty of stuff in it too. So I didn't necessarily feel inclined to like give them a lot of benefit of the doubt, having tried 2 seasons and found that, yeah, they still screwed up a fair amount of the time. But this has them on a good footing for me.
Yeah.
I'm kind of hyped to see the next episode.
Yeah, you and me both. But keep in mind, we are only 20% of the way there, so there's still a lot of times for things can get even better, or they could become much worse. We'll just have to keep riding the ride and see where it takes us. I don't think I have anything else on this episode.
I don't think I necessarily do either. I think we kind of hit all of the all of the big stuff. Yeah.
Well, we do like to hear what other people think. So y'all just heard us talk for over an hour about Season 3, Episode 2, Disengage. We would love to hear some comments, or you can reply to my tweets, or hit us up on the Tex-Trek Facebook page or in the Tex-Trek Discord server. Let us know what you thought about this episode. We did ask some folks last week, what did they think of that Season 3 premiere episode, The Next Generation? So, Dave, do we have any subspace transmissions from last week that you'd like to share?
A lot of people shared their thoughts. I'm going to kind of go through some of these real quick. Broadly speaking, people seemed really on board. Brandon Carmody says, amazing season opener. Someone, I don't know how to pronounce it, PZJN, Pigeon, says, I love it, and it made me want to see a hashtag 7 Raffi spinoff even more. Carrie Edwards says, happily surprised, felt like a true continuation, shame about the last 2 seasons. Our regular fan, Joanne Robertson, said, I thought it was solid, and I thought Frakes gave the best performance of the episode. I also love how smartly rude the captain is, even though he's clearly harboring some prejudice. Let's see. Here's a naysayer. Stuart McElwain says, dreadful, empty fan service that leads nowhere. Barely lit sets giving a dystopian feel to everything. So he was maybe a little closer to how I felt
where you were last week.
Where I was last week.
Well,
I'll be curious.
He needs to reply again and let us know if he still feels the same way or if this changed his
Absolutely.
mind.
That's I would love to hear from him, even if he still didn't like it. Earl Grey Trekkie, Robbie, says, show absolutely bathed in nostalgia, but I love it. And if you remove that nostalgic lens, I still think you have a compelling story with an interesting conflict so far. Seven's position was difficult to watch. Some of Frakes' best work, and Beverly's frantic opening was, there's some emoji that has not translated to where I cut and pasted it, so he must have emojied something. But apparently he found it found it pretty intense.
Nice.
Stephen Piquette says, wonderful episode. Yes, fan service, but if it's done this well, then please more. Not the best Star Trek episode, but the best Picard so far, and we really need an announcement for a 7 spinoff as soon as possible. One of the most complex and exciting characters in the series. Let's see. Jesse was taken with Picard's mixtape. I liked that too. I did like that Picard had made an old school mixtape.
It's a very Gen X thing.
Yeah, he never would have called it that. He would never have used those words. He would have said, I've put together a compilation for you, Beverly.
Yeah, a compilation. That sounds
good. I think that's kind of all the big stuff. I was happy to see how many people were into the show enough to respond back, and I imagine we're going to have more thoughts on this second episode. It has so much happening.
Very cool. So yeah, again, sorry that we had to do a leaner show, and we had to leave the Gorn eggs behind this week. I just didn't have time to get everything in order for that. But I don't know. Do people still enjoy the Tex-Trek Gorn eggs? Do we need to keep doing it? Do you all want us to bring it back next week? Let me know on that too. But yeah, next week will still be a little weird because I'll be traveling back from Los Angeles. So maybe I'll be streaming live from a hotel with the mobile emitter set up. We'll have to wait and see about next week. But yeah, we'll still get the show out Friday. Somehow, and that's every week, Friday, 7 p.m. Central, or you can listen to us later, wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.